And today, I want to talk to you guys about a word. And the word is moment. Everyone say moment. Moment. What is a moment? And can one moment really change your life? I remember, so maybe over the past few days, if you've seen me and I was hangry, I apologize. But I've gotten hangry before, but in a single moment, when I get into that cafeteria, boom, just like that, I'm all better. And maybe for you, you're driving home from sports practice, wasn't a good practice, and your mom says, hey, we're gonna stop at Chick-fil-A. And just like that, in a single moment, your life is a whole lot better, right? But maybe for some of us, it's something that someone might have said to us, something that might have been posted about us, and in a moment, it can affect us negatively. Now, what if I told you one moment with God could change more than your day? It could change your direction, it could change your identity, and it could change your future. A moment is when God gets your attention, when it feels like time slows down and it's just you and him. You can feel it kind of in your chest. It might come through worship. It might come through a message. It might come through a one-on-one with your leader, or it could come through complete silence. And moments, real God moments, often begin when we choose to seek. In Jeremiah 29:13, it says, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. God doesn't hide to avoid us. He hides to be found. And like a game of hide and seek, he's waiting for you to look beyond the surface, to stop rushing, and to search with your whole heart. And my first point, if you're taking notes, is that God moves in moments. So I want to share this story about a guy named Zacchaeus. And few things to note about Zacchaeus. He was a grown man, but he was short. So he was older, but he was about your guys' height. So he was short, nobody liked him. He was a tax collector, which basically means he was a professional scammer, and he was an outcast. So Zacchaeus had everything that the world said you should seek to be fulfilled. He had money, he had power, he had status, but none of it satisfied him. And he still came looking, because when you stop being entertained, you will start to realize you're still empty. And in this story, Jesus enters the city of Jericho. It's packed out and it's loud. Imagine he's here and it's the praise pit from last night. There's stuff going on. Everyone's jumping. Everyone's screaming. You can't hear. You can't see. You don't know what's about to happen next. But naturally, Zacchaeus wanted to see what all the hype was about. He wanted to see what was going on. He heard the noise. He heard the shouts. But since he was so short, he couldn't see. And here's where seeking begins. Zacchaeus was at home. He was comfortable. He had his shoes up on his desk, but something inside of him said, I've got to move. And I wonder how many of us are stuck in the same spot spiritually because we refuse to change our proximity, where we're at. You can't stay close to your shame and expect to see his presence. You can't stay close to bitterness and expect to walk through his breakthrough. So what does Zacchaeus do? He climbs a tree. He just wants to look at Jesus. And Jesus stops, looks at him, calls him by name, and says, Zacchaeus, come down. I'm coming to your house. Now, what would you do if Jesus said that? He said, come down. I'm coming to your house. And that moment right there changed everything for Zacchaeus. He gave back all he had stolen and followed Jesus from that day on. And what's so incredible about this story is that Zacchaeus came for a glimpse and walked away with a new life. And now Zacchaeus wasn't the guy that you'd expect to have a moment with Jesus. Jesus could have walked right past him, but Jesus stopped for a moment. He looked up at someone who the whole crowd ignored, and he called him by name. Jesus stopped under the tree of a man the crowd wanted to ignore, because when you seek to find Jesus, he truly does see you, and not just the broken version of you, but who you were always meant to be. And in that one moment, Zacchaeus' whole life changed. And you never know when a moment will be a movement in your life. So Zacchaeus didn't show up expecting to host Jesus. He didn't show up ready to change his whole life. Zacchaeus was rich, so he was well off. He was good by himself. He had what the world said you should have. He could have stayed in his comfort zone. He could have stayed at home, but he changed his proximity. If you stay close to your shame, if you stay close to your past, if you stay close to your pride, you'll never get close to his presence. So what did he do? He moved, he climbed, and he sought. And when Jesus reached the spot under his tree, he stopped. A divine moment in what was supposed to be just a pass through. But again, that one moment with Jesus changed everything. And maybe you're in here and you feel like Zacchaeus, like you've made mistakes, like people have labeled you, like you're on the outside. But Jesus isn't passing you by. He's stopping right here, right now, in this room. You don't have to earn the moment. Zacchaeus didn't. He just had to show up and respond. He went from being hated to being seen. He went from being selfish to being generous. He went from being lost to being found. And that's what happens when God moves through a moment. In Luke 19, verse 9, it says, "Today salvation has come to his house, for the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost." So like I said, this wasn't just a cool, casual hangout with Jesus. This was a divine appointment, a moment that marked him. And I believe that today can truly be the same for you. If God could do that in Zacchaeus' life, if God could do that in my life, why not yours? Why not this morning? You may feel unseen. You may feel far from God, but you need to know this, that God isn't waiting for you to be perfect. He's waiting for you to be present. Jesus didn't just see Zacchaeus, he saw who Zacchaeus could become. The name Zacchaeus actually means pure and innocent one. And that's not who the crowd thought he was. It's not who he had been, but Jesus called out who he was created to be, not who he had been pretending to be. And maybe you've been hiding behind your past. Maybe you've been hiding behind your mistakes, even your successes, but Jesus isn't intimidated by what you've done. He's calling you by your real name. Your real name is chosen. Your real name is forgiven. Your real name is loved. Your real name is worthy. So don't underestimate the moment you're in, because God moves through moments, ordinary ones, unexpected ones, quiet ones. You're not just sitting in a room at camp. You're sitting in the middle of a moment that God might be using to write your story. And I want to ask a question. Who in here brought a notebook? Just put it up if you brought a notebook. Amazing. This right here, this is my notebook, and this is my notebook that I've kept for the past 11 years. And I remember that I wrote down in my journal, again, I didn't know anyone. My handwriting is really, really bad. You can see I'm like, let go, let God, the most basic of the basics. I was that kid. I liked to scribble a little bit, so I had all the drawings in there. It says, hashtags were in when I was your guys' age, so it says hashtag CYC. But I remember when I wrote in my journal, at the moment, I was just taking notes and writing down my prayers, asking God to do all these things in my life. And it's really funny because after some years go by, you go back into these journals and you can really see where God marked you. And I didn't even realize it. It's past 10 years, but God marked my life when I was in a room just like this. The enemy wants to lie to us and say, I'm too young to have a God moment. There's no way I can have that in middle school. I'm gonna wait till I'm in high school. I'm gonna wait till I'm an adult. No. God can start in your life today. God has already started in your life this week. It's a moment that marks you. And my second point is that not all holy moments have to be loud. And let's be honest, when we think of God moments, we picture something really loud. The lights, the music, everyone's crying, everyone's emotional, we're all hugging each other, there's snot everywhere. I know, I saw it last night. But maybe someone next to you was praying and you're next to them and you're like, should I be praying like that? Or I feel like I can't do that. Or how come I don't feel what they're feeling? But can I tell you something that might free some of you this morning? Not all holy moments have to be loud. Some of the most powerful moments with God are quiet, they're simple, and they're personal. Moments where it's just you and him. No stage, no crowd, no hype, just stillness. And that's what this entire camp has been about this week. Be still and know. And you can't be still without also choosing to seek. And it reminds me of playing hide and seek as a kid. Anyone play hide and seek? Yeah? Now, the real one is hide and seek in the dark. Yeah, right? You guys like that one? Me too. You'd start counting down, and then you rush into the room expecting to find someone immediately, but when you didn't see them right away, you panic. I loved playing hide and seek in the dark, but then like after 10 seconds, I become pretty afraid of the dark. So I would panic and run out of the room, try to find somebody, turn on the lights, start opening every door, looking under the bed in all these different areas. And sometimes you'd leave the room where actually hiding in just because you didn't wait long enough to look for the person. And sometimes I think we do that with God. We rush into a worship moment. We rush into a quiet time. We rush into camp. And if we don't feel him right away, we assume that he's not there. But maybe it's not that he's hiding from you. Maybe he's waiting to see if you'll pause long enough to actually find him. And think about Zacchaeus again. Jesus is walking through a crowded street. People are shouting his name, trying to get his attention, pressing in around him. It's loud, but Zacchaeus is up in a tree, kind of hiding, kind of hoping to see Jesus. He's not yelling. He's not waving a sign. He doesn't have a megaphone. He's not asking for anything. He's just looking. And God says in Jeremiah 29:13, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. It doesn't say feel with all your heart. It says seek. Zacchaeus was still, and Jesus stopped the whole entire crowd. He doesn't say, hey, everybody, make some noise for Zacchaeus. He doesn't call a meeting. He just looks up and says, Zacchaeus, come down. I'm coming to your house today. And that was the moment. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy, but it marked him. So I want to encourage you, don't miss God just because he didn't shout. Some of you have been waiting for something to shake the room, and God's telling you, hey, I'm here. You just have to be still enough to hear me. And there's a verse in the Bible where God shows up to Elijah, and it says that God wasn't in the wind, he wasn't in the earthquake, he wasn't in the fire, but then it says, and after the fire came a gentle whisper. That's where God was, in the whisper. And I believe that the same thing is true here at camp. Maybe the loudest thing that God wants to say might come in the quietest way. So if you've been sitting here wondering, when's it going to be my turn? Or why haven't I felt something huge yet? Hear me. That doesn't mean that God's not working. It means he could be working in a different way, a still, gentle, personal way, just like he did with Zacchaeus. And my last point is moments require a response. You know what I really love about Zacchaeus' story? It doesn't end in the tree. It doesn't end with Jesus walking by and saying, what's up? It ends with a response. In Luke 19:6, it says, so he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. And then just a few verses later, Zacchaeus says, look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and I've cheated anybody out of anything. And if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. That's wild. He goes from being a shady tax collector to being a generous, open-hearted, and changed person. And it's all because he responded to a moment. And that's not a casual response. That's a marked moment, a changed life. Zacchaeus had been still long enough in that tree to see Jesus, and it led to knowing who he really was. And after you seek, and after you see, you've got to decide, will I stay? Will I stand? Camp is the treetop moment when you see everything clearly. But transformation happens at the table when you stay. And revival happens when you stand and when you put action behind the encounter. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to jump, isn't to shout or run around. It's to pause and to be still, to let the weight of a moment sink in, to say, God, what are you trying to say to me? God, what do you want me to see about who you are and about who I am? You've had a lot of moments this week at camp, some big, some quiet, and maybe some even unexpected. But now comes the most important one. What will you do with what God has shown you? Like Zacchaeus, will you respond? Will you be brave enough to say, I don't want to go back to who I was? Will you be still enough to hear God whisper, I'm not done with you yet. I'm just getting started. He could have stayed in the tree. He could have said, not today. He could have let the moment pass, but he didn't. And here's the truth. Moments with God will change you, but only if you respond. God can call you by name. He can stop for you. He can speak directly to your heart, and it will mean nothing if you don't move. Zacchaeus didn't get his life because he saw Jesus. His life changed because he said yes. Yes to coming down. Yes to making things right. Yes to following Jesus. And now it's your turn. You may have not climbed a tree today, but you showed up. Maybe your heart's been stirred all week. Maybe you've heard God whisper something you didn't expect. And maybe this week was the first time you've ever really been still long enough to hear him. I'm gonna invite the worship team up because what we're gonna do in just a few moments is I'm gonna give you the opportunity to respond. Psalm 46:10, it says again, be still and know that I am God. Stillness isn't about silence. It's about surrender. It's about slowing down long enough just to recognize that God is near and he's not far off, that he knows your name and he's calling you just like Zacchaeus. This moment isn't loud. It's not flashy, but it's holy. And here's what I believe with everything in me. God is giving you this moment right now to respond. Some of you, this is your Zacchaeus moment. You've been curious, you've been watching, but now Jesus is saying, come down and let me in. Maybe today, your version of climbing a tree looks like raising your hand in worship for the first time. Maybe your version of climbing a tree is saying a prayer out loud. Maybe it's praying for a friend or walking down to the altar or finally letting go of what's keeping you at distance. And when you do, know this, Jesus is not asking you to be perfect. He's just asking you to be present.